Dan, nice to meet you.
Hi Dan, how you doing?
Very nice to meet you. What's your name?
My name is Manny.
Manny, very nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
So are you from Philadelphia, Manny?
I am not from Philadelphia,
Where?
but I live in Philadelphia.
Okay, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from New York City.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. I often adequate New York City as the big Philadelphia, right? Like if you take Center City, Philadelphia, and then blow that up 100 times, that's like Midtown or Manhattan.
Well, I have the opposite kind of like perception. Like I've always looked at Philadelphia as like what would New York would have been in like the early '90s, late '80s.
Okay.
And and while Philadelphia has like modernized itself just like any other like municipality or any other city, like there is a grittiness to Philadelphia that just remains the same and very consistent. And I think that's one of the reasons why gritty is one of the most popular like
Sports fanatics.
Like most popular mascots.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying?
I never had anybody adequate the city feel to that mascot, like put it in that perspective.
And there's a reason why people have such a huge affectionate feeling towards gritty. There's from my own experience, Philadelphians are people who are really passionate and they really hope that you're doing the right thing, but also they're there's something about like the dirtiness and the rough around the edges that like makes it beautiful as well, and
Authentic.
That's authentic.
Yeah.
Did that make sense? Yeah.
Yes, yes. So I mean, with all that being said, you must love Philly a lot more than New York, right? For you to stay here, compared to.
Do I love Philly more than New York? It's a complicated. So, like, one of the selling points to my house when my husband and I were looking for a house, and we found our house in West Philly, was the fact that there's a late '80s, early '90s mural of Lower Manhattan in the living room.
In the living room.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, and I was born and raised in New York City, and my husband had to hit, even though he was from the greater Boston area, his family always like spent the holidays in the Upper West Side, which is where I also grew up in New York City.
Okay.
And so like we have a connection and affinity to New York in a very positive sense. Being that, I grew up poor in New York, but growing up poor in New York just automatically makes you a character.
Okay.
And I wouldn't change that for the world.
Right.
And then my husband, he grew up with a wonderful set of educators as parents, who really wanted to give their son the best chance to success,
Right.
because he's on the spectrum.
Okay.
But despite, I'm hesitant to say despite, because it's just a wrong word, because like in reality, my husband is a really good fucking social worker, and his neurodiversity only enhances his ability to do his job. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so like, did I answer the question?
Yes.
Very cool.
Yes.
Cool.
So the question I'm going around and asking today, and we briefly spoke on it a little bit, is at what age in America do you think adulthood starts now? Like going from somebody who's dependent upon their parents to now being fully independent. At what stage do you think that
Well,
happens?
that's a really loaded question for me, because I was independent in the same level as many of these college students are now, when I was 14 years old.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? My father wasn't a big fan of that, but I was very very sneaky. in New York City, you pick high schools as if like high school students pick colleges, because there's so many high schools.
So you actually pick what school
So
you want to go?
so you apply to high schools as if a high school student would apply to college.
That's
Because there's
cool.
over 300 schools in New York, 300 high schools in New York City,
Okay.
including some magnet schools that are you have to take very advanced tests to get in. It's all bullshit. It's like really not okay to do that, but that's the reality in New York City.
Okay.
And so I picked a high school that I knew I was going to get into without any issue, and it happens to be across the street from my grandmother's.
Convenient.
And very convenient. And so at 14 years old, I took it upon myself to like kind of finagle my way out of my parents' house, because I knew that I was about to come out as a young teenager, as queer, as gay, and I knew that like even though my dad maybe would have not reacted bad, I knew my stepmother's religion at the time wasn't gonna like mesh well with me coming out. And so those, and then September 11th, ironically, kind of solidified my stay at my grandmother's, because when September 11th happened, my high school is located in Manhattan, and it was one of the high schools that were locked down, and you know they were told that they had to house their out of borough students overnight. And I was like, fuck no, and I snuck out to school with the rest
And
of
went right across the street.
yeah, we went right across the street to grandma's.
Okay.
And because of that, my dad is like, well, that's a safer place for you.
Right.
And I just stayed there, and and so by chance, I moved out when I was 14. And I
Okay.
had like a very adult experience, adult existence with my grandmother, because she didn't check my homework. She didn't give me
Right.
curfew. You know, in New York City, they give you these student metro cards. So like
Okay.
I roamed around the city until like 3. I would go hang out all night and go to school the next morning.
Because you had access to the public transit all night, and
Well, not all
couldn't-
night, but it gave me enough access before that cutoff
Okay.
line where I'll just be in the system all night or something like that.
There you go. And living at your grandmom's was more like an apartment than like you know
Yeah.
coming home like you got to be here this
There
time
was a
for
lot of
dinner.
independence in that. And so for me, becoming an adult was a lot earlier for me than other people, and in many ways, without even with the legal like recognition, I was in many ways emancipated from my parents,
Okay.
and I was making my own decisions that people had no choice but to respect.
Do you think it was a lot like what I hear from you is kind of like it was more of personal life choices that changed you from a child into a man? You decided what kind of life you wanted to live, and then you pursued it.
It had a lot to do with this weird feeling that I was about to come of age, and I needed the right place, like the right time and place for that to happen.
Okay.
And it was the right idea, because I started going to the youth programs at the community center.
Okay.
There's a gay community center called the Lesbian Gay Community Service Center. It's now called LGBT Community Center
In New York.
in New York City. Yeah.
Okay.
And I used to go to their youth programs, and the youth programs really saved my life in many ways, because for a lot of queer people, for a lot of queer teenagers, they have to be adults. They have no choice. You know, for a lot of my friends, they were homeless because they were kicked out for being gay, and that was a normal existence for my young years.
Do you think that's still a challenge facing a lot of gay young youth now, like coming out to their parents? I know, like my cousin, he has a husband, and they are a beautiful couple.
Sorry, we're not a.
1 minute, and I'll explain it to you. Okay?
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate you. He when he came out, you know, it was a very mixed feeling from his mother. She kind of almost disowned him for a small period of time, and then they were able to rekindle their relationship, but it was very tense. And that was, you know, I want to say 2018, 2020, kind of, I'm not precise, very recently, right? It wasn't, you know, 2000, 2001 era. Do you think a lot like it is detrimental. Do you like get along with your dad now?
My dad. Oh wow, that's a loaded question.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. No. So I'm currently processing his really abrupt and sudden loss.
Sorry to hear
He
that.
died very suddenly in January,
Okay.
and he died he died while he was doing something that was deliberate in trying to get in our good graces. You know what I'm saying? And that's very difficult for me. You know what I'm saying? My dad and I had a very my dad and I have a very had a very tumultuous and very strange up and down relationship.
Okay.
You know, there was a guy who at one point said he was going to kill me because he thought I was robbing him. He went from that to like, you know, I'm proud of you for finishing community college. So it's a wide range. My father had a debilitating. So what was your question again, so I could answer it?
So my question at hand was, did you and your father get along now compared to back then, where you like left his house because you were in fear of not getting along with him?
So I before he died, we got along great.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
We got along great mostly because of all the work that we put into it. You
Okay.
know, at one point, close to 3 years ago, I had to commit my dad against his will into the psych ward. With police involved and everything. It was it still remains one of the hardest experiences in my life. And I still feel, whenever I bring up that memory, I still have the feeling of betrayal, even though it was the one thing that finally helped us and improved our friendship. Or not friendship, our relationship.
Right.
And because they were able to find what was actually wrong with him, stabilize him with drugs, and then we were able to all kind of make it snap into his head that in order for us to have a good life, he needs to be on top of his meds.
Right.
And he really made an effort to try to keep that for 2 years, and then one day in January when he was trying to go to his appointments, specifically his psych appointment, so he could like continue his head in the bargain. He had respiratory problems that my stepmother was suspicious about. He was checked up during the appointment because it was at a hospital. He seemed okay. I don't know what that means. And then when they were leaving, his body started getting sepsis because of some sort of inflammation in his lungs, which means that his body suddenly overreacts to infection, and then an organ starts shutting down.
Right.
Because it's kind of an overreaction to an infection, and he died the next morning.
I'm very sorry.
So
I'm thankful though that you were able to mend the relationship prior to that and come on good.
but I'm a unique individual. Most people, I can't say that because I don't know that for sure, but there's a lot of other people who would not been able to do what I did. You know what I'm saying? You know, my father, when he had his stroke in 2016 and was forced into early retirement, I could have not stepped into the role of being his primary health proxy,
Right.
where I make decisions on his behalf.
Right.
I could have just like been like, fuck you, you know, like too little too late. But I didn't, and that's really hard because, you know, my father fundamentally had a lot of disagreements with life decisions, but it was not bad life decisions. Like I decided to lead a life of activism and advocacy and not go to college.
Okay.
You know, like, you know what I'm saying? It was funny now because I'm a college student now, and I'm about to finish my degree at 38.
Congratulations.
Or 39. I'm about to finish my degree in 39 in political science after having a career in politics.
Okay.
And I know I'm a suffer for punishment. And this is what my dad really wanted. He really wanted me to graduate college, and he didn't understand that what I was doing was still really productive and helpful and inspiring.
Okay.
Like, because to him, yeah, I could do all of that after college.
Right.
I did it the other way around.
Nothing wrong with it. I think, and I think you did watch one of my other questions on Instagram. Is college a scam? And I ask that a lot to people because in other cultures, you go and pick your trade skill, right? And then they teach you a little bit. They see if you're able to do it, right? Like conditioned and psychologically good to do that, right? Like a doctor, right? You have to be able to see blood and perform, right? Like you can't faint.
So,
right?
so education and college and universities and access to them is not a scam. The way that we monetize or make this access exclusive through pricing.
Okay. Yes. So
So I don't think this is a waste of time. I just think that it's too much of an obstacle when it should be a fundamental right by every single person who wants to go to college after they're done with their K to 12.
Amen. Amen. So I think partly why I think it's not the school and not the education that's a scam, but how they scam the culture, right? Like right out of high school, you say to a kid that barely knows what they want to do with their life, you got to pick what you're going to do with the next 2, 4, 8 years, and then we're going to put you in a mountain of debt for it, and hopefully you like to do it, right?
I think that the original intentions are not that.
Right.
And I think that's what it's become.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is because when you think about entities like City College of New York or CUNY, when you think of like the state college system, when you think of different entities that exist today, and you look at their history and you look at how they benefited to their students in the past, you know, like I don't know if Colin Powell is a good example because he's a Republican and he's a war criminal and he's probably responsible for a lot of people dying.
Familiar with Colin Powell.
So Colin Powell was the Secretary of Defense
Okay.
during Bush Jr.'s presidency.
So 2000 to 2008.
Yes.
Okay.
And Condoleezza Rice was the was the Secretary of State.
Okay.
And so, and Colin Powell got all of his college education at City College of New York.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? If it was not for that affordable, close to free education that he had access to, even without the GI Bill, because he would have still had access to it with the GI Bill.
Right.
If it wasn't for that, he would have not been the successful person in the White House making fucked up decisions that he did. Right. You know what I'm saying? And so there are many examples of really like well-established, well-renowned people today who would not be where they're at if it wasn't for affordable or free access to higher education.
So, and I talked to a few people about college so far. Do you think it's the education for people like that, like Colin Powell, or the networking, like going to?
I think you can't have one without the other.
Okay.
Because City College is not like Harvard. You know what I'm saying? And so naturally you're gonna have more networking opportunities at Harvard, but it doesn't change the fact that you can still maybe get the same opportunities if you have access to just education in general. You know what I'm saying? And if you look into City College, the school that I'm talking about, which is part of the CUNY system in New York City, what do you call it? It used to be free.
Yes.
It used to be free.
Well, if you look at like most educations, like Benjamin Franklin, right? Like in Philadelphia, like they made colleges so that people could come and trade their trades with one another. farmers could come and speak about agriculture and moving water correctly to create a further yield for the rest of the farmers. It wasn't like, hey, pay us $10,000 and we'll teach you how to do your farms. It was like, we'll all come together in this community kind of aspect and teach the whole community how to farm correctly so we have an abundance of food for everybody.
But that's something that makes sense years ago.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It doesn't make sense now. You know what I'm saying?
I think.
But I also believe. Go ahead, finish.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you took, you know what a trade school is, right? Like a high school trade school.
Mm-hmm.
If you took that and blew that up to college size, right? Where like the leaders, not to say college professors aren't great, but if you took the leader of Dell or Microsoft and put them in the college seminar teaching engineering courses of like software engineering, how to do that, they would use that R&D from that college course, right, to further not only the technology outside the building, but those people and how the technology in the real world works, right? Instead of theory, put practicality to it, right? Especially with all the
But what's
money.
the issue? I'm trying to figure out what you're trying to...
So instead of like...
Do you want to make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the technical high school I went to, right, had 28 different shops, right? You had dentistry, you had electrical, you had...
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right? So if you took the plumbing side and you gave it a whole building like you see right behind me, the Fox Hall School of Business, right? And that was a plumbing R&D, like if you wanted to become a plumber, we sent you there and you figured out not only the current way how to plumb and move water throughout the system underneath roads, in houses, but a better way to do it, right? Like we look at toilets, they just haven't changed in 150 years, right? Simple things in life like bicycles, right? If we look at the drive belt to a bicycle, it's just 2 gears and a chain.
Well, I find that all funny. This is something that I've heard before, but not in this context. I've heard this before in the context of Star Trek.
Okay, so kind of
like
to Star Trek, but
because it's like in the first season of Star Trek Picard, a fan, a viewer, made a complaint about the fact that there's a scene where one of the characters, while during lunch and waiting around for something, was listening to music in their pods.
Okay.
And so the question is that like, are pods real? If like are pods real? If what was I saying? Sorry, I'm
sorry. You were talking about Star Trek. The person was putting in their headphones and listening to music, and then if pods were real, but I didn't understand the pod. Right?
So the complaint is that like this is like about 200 years into the future, beyond Apple AirPods. Wouldn't you think that in 200 years we will have something better than the same white pod in your ear?
Correct. So,
and I would argue no, because if something works,
why change it?
And I think that we're already seeing evidence of that. You look at flat screen TVs.
Haven't changed. Just getting bigger.
They're just getting bigger and cheaper.
Yep. So and to adequate to that, I think the
Sorry, I had a brain fire for a moment, but I got it back. I made the connection.
So I think you see a lot of like faces, right, walking past, right? They're not excited. They're not passionate, right? They're not giddy.
You don't know that. You can't. You don't know that.
Okay.
Okay. You know why I call that out. I'll explain why I call that out. Because for me personally, because I'm not going to speak for anybody else, and so you may be completely right about the observations you're making, but speaking for me, and I know I'm not alone, campus is the best place for me to be right now. There's a lot going on, and one of the more stable forces in my life right now, in addition to my husband and my home and my house, is here. You know what I'm saying?
glad you said that. Do you think does being here make you happy and more stable, or being in class learning about something you care make you more happy and stable?
Both.
Okay.
Because what people don't account for is the, and I'll use my husband as an example. Okay, my husband did not grow up with many friends. People
Okay.
are really fucked up and vicious,
Yes.
and especially when we're much younger, elementary school age, middle school age, some high school age, you know, we could be incredibly petty when we pick our friends, or how we keep our company, or how we formulate our opinions before college, before we reach that coming of age, and which is, that in itself is slightly different from other people, from person to person, because my coming of age was 15, but for most people their coming of age is 18. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And there are other people who their coming of age is not until 25.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And what I mean by coming of age is that you have that like realization moment where this is what I need to do in order to live my life successfully and happily. A lot of, that, I think that that's something that clicks in your mind, and that's when you that's when it's that that's when it changes from you are being reckless and and being a pretty like open teenager,
Right.
to okay, I'm gonna start thinking about the stuff that I do before I do it. Does everybody do that? Does every adult do that? No, but
No.
that's how I defined it, and so
And do you think that's when we can start being a responsible adult?
yeah, but to say that it's all 18 or all 21, it's ridiculous.
Right.
It's really ridiculous, you know.
What would you say is like an easy stage to kind of say, like when you move out and you get your own place, when you finish college, when you
Well-
start a family? It's not necessarily age, but like success or like stage in life.
So sometimes it's really lopsided. Sometimes it can't be all one age and one person. You know what
Okay.
I'm saying? It could be. So going back to my husband, because I was going to a very specific point and I missed it. He didn't have many friends growing up, and then so when he got to college, that's when all the stabilizing factors just hit him all at once. And so leaving college was actually quite traumatic for him,
Okay.
because in college he had a constant support system of people who did not give a fuck about his quirkiness, and they thought like, this guy just puked on my shoes, I'm gonna be his friend. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
You know,
That's tough in the real world.
and that is a benefit, a huge benefit that could come from going to college.
Yes.
Does that make? Did I like I feel like I did.
It's that self-esteem, that building of welcoming into your own community and having a safe place, you know, where people don't judge you and you are free to be yourself, you know, day to day. That's a very important thing to life, right? Waking up and walking out of your house and feeling free for the pursuit of your own happiness, right? That's in our Constitution. Like, you have to be able to walk out that and be able to chase your own dreams and not fear of anybody else's judgment, right?
And I think that more people should have access to this.
To college.
I'll give you an example. My in-laws are paying for everything.
Okay.
I have an established career of over 20 years working in advocacy and political organizing. I work for many different large progressive political organizations. Even though they're progressive doesn't mean that all their actions are progressive, because I worked at one very big, very well-known nonprofit that I'm not going to name here,
Right.
but I worked there for 2 years without health insurance. because I was under the guise that I put myself in. Like, I did it. That, this is what people do for the good of the movement.
Right. Well, the good of the movement would take care of the people.
Exactly. And so, like, I got really burnt out. It is the case for a lot of organizers of color, organizers who are not white.
Right.
And and if it wasn't for the fact that I married into a completely different income bracket, I would not have the privilege to just quit my career and go back to college full time and not currently have a full time job.
Right. And still have a place to live.
And still have a place to live. I have a house. Only reason why I could do all of that is because of my current closeness to privilege. You know what I'm saying? And most people don't have that. If not, all people do not have that. And so, like, I don't think college is a waste of time. I think college is valuable. I wish I fucking finished college years ago. Because years ago, I was given the resources by the government to go to school for free.
Okay.
And that is still accessible currently by many of the students on this campus. But as an adult who's already flunked out of school, and also who has had many decade plus of different tax returns and income and stuff like that, I missed out on an opportunity to get free money to finish college. And I'm not the only one.
Right.
But I am the only one that's married into a wealthy family, who's like, yeah, I'll cover your college.
And that's very nice of them.
It's very nice of them, but it's not to be taken for granted.
Right. Well, I think they see the love that you have for their son. And, once you're married, you're kind of their kid.
Oh, I am their kid. I'm definitely their kid.
So
we have that kind of relationship. They're my parents, and I love them to death as that. But with that said, I would not be able to do what I'm doing right now if it wasn't. And there are a lot of other people who are 38 who are burnt out from all their years of advocacy, who don't have college degrees, so they don't really have a fallback plan, and have no other choice but to shove themselves into more campaign jobs. And then, like, now with all the experience I have, and then having that piece of paper, like, the opportunities that are away, and I'm not saying that to fill me up, to make me gloated.
Right.
I'm saying that because I know that I'm gonna do really well off. I'm gonna do really well work-wise.
It's all about having your mind set on something and chasing that desire and being motivated to do that. Do you have any piece of life advice for the people out there, Manny, that has helped you through life? It's a tough one.
Think before you do something, even if it's stupid.
Okay.
Like, it's
Don't
good.
just go with the gut feeling.
No, gut feelings are fine, and it's just don't do things like. It's okay, even if you want to do something stupid. It's okay to spend an extra second to make sure that stupid thing was done right.
Amen.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
I feel like that. I think that we do things with a lot of impulse, and we do things that hurt other people, and we don't realize it until the very last minute.
Yes.
And sometimes sometimes that means that you have to not lead with emotion, and that's really hard.
For a lot.
It's really hard, and that's a lesson that I'm learning right now with my friend, He's a person that I met a few years ago as colleagues. He worked at a different organization. I worked at a different one, and we did a lot of cross movement work. And but uh, uh, and so it was easy for me to be like, your situation is whack. You need to come stay with me.
Right.
And then and so like it sucks for it to not work out because I'm truly invested in people's success, and I'm willing, and I'm not, and I'm very generous with the generosity is being given to me, but I will not give it if my sense of peace and if or there's no sense of like, wait, I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't be around people who cannot see that they're doing something wrong. It's really, queer people still have to deal with a lot of bullshit. Like, there's a lot of progress that LGBT people have gone through. And I posted about this on Facebook earlier because I'm really angry about and sad about what's going on with me. When I posted on Facebook, I actually will share it with you, and maybe this is a good end. On Facebook, what I wrote earlier was fuck crystal meth. Like, fuck it to fucking hell. Yes, we got marriage equality and I'm happily married, but it's still fucking hard to be trans, gay, or queer. Our community is still dealing with HIV in alarming rates, still dealing with Tina, which is another way to call crystal meth.
Right.
Dealing with Tina, fucking everything up again in alarming rates, and still ridiculously low life expectancy among black, brown, queer, and trans folks. We're failing our community point blank. Right now, the life expectancy for a black and brown trans woman is 35.
Do you think that's because of physical things or mental health?
I think that, I think it's all of the above.
Okay.
And it's not always because of the failing mental health of the person in question. It could be the failing mental health of the people around that trans person.
Right, and applying all that pressure, right? Like a flower that gets sun, right, grows better, right, than a flower that gets sun or rain and clouds all the time, right? So like somebody who's beautiful and like the icon of society is going to get a lot of praise, a lot of sun feelings, and like very shiny days, where like somebody who may be less picked, right? Like
I understand what you're trying to say, but I think that the bigger issue is the rampant misogyny and toxic masculinity that happens in relationship with trans women.
okay,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's not because yes, there is obviously examples of trans people being in danger for just simply being who they are.
Right.
But in addition to that, trans women oftentimes feel like they're limited in their choices of romantic partners, and which is not true, but it's the perception that is out there.
Right.
And oftentimes the violence and the loss of death comes from intimate partner violence.
Domestic violence.
Domestic violence. Yeah. And that's why the life expectancy for a lot of black trans women is 35.
That's very sad.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I think everybody should have the right to live the way and life that they want, right?
Yeah.
No matter what it is. If you're being a great person in the world, it doesn't matter what kind. You know what I mean? So I thank you for sitting down with us today, Manny. I really appreciate your thoughts and how you feel about the world.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.